Welcome, everybody, to another installment of the Once More for Safety show. So, what do we do on this show?
We talk about because you say you're talking about aspects of filmmaking, and you talk about that with one of the best and one of the worst filmmakers on the planet. So
I'm not one of the best filmmakers on the
I
planet.
meant in Nebraska. I meant in Nebraska.
I wouldn't even say in Nebraska.
In Lincoln.
Just keep narrowing down the geography of it.
On the south side of town.
Yes, right on the south side of, right around South Point. I'm the best filmmaker around South Point.
Yeah, go with that.
Okay, yeah, so that's what we do on here. We have a lot of episodes in the backlog. You guys can check all different aspects of filmmaking. We've interviewed numerous people. We have a bunch of stuff planned coming up. So you're going to be seeing interviews from actors and a whole bunch of other cool stuff. So check us out on Outpost Unknown if you're interested. But today, what is our topic today?
Today we're talking about how we go about casting films. So we kind of already sort of in a small minor way covered this, but I'll be really honest with you, we're running out of shit to talk about, so we're just gonna do this again. So
yeah, you got to expand because there's only so much you can talk about, right? There's only so many topics that a micro-budget filmmaker can talk about. Now, there's probably, if you're in a Hollywood production and you can have a million different stories and different aspects, we don't run in those circles. We make movies for $500 with borrowed equipment. So there's only so much.
$500 sounds awesome.
Yeah, there's only so much we could talk about until we start diving into the individual films we've made and stuff like that. But in terms of big picture topics, but if there is something that anyone out there listening would be interested in having us speak to, feel free to email us at outpostunknown@gmail.com or leave a comment, and we will definitely stick it on the docket. But yes, today we're going to expand. We're going to expand our initial discussion on casting, which happened in our pre-production show, where we went over a bunch of different facets of what you have to do before you ever get the camera out and start rolling footage. We talked a little bit about casting then, but we're going to go into a bigger deep dive on casting on this episode. Now, I guess I'll sort of throw this out to you as just sort of an initial, icebreaker question. When you were first starting out, Josh, were you intimidated by the idea of casting a film or not?
So when I first started out, a lot of it was just like begging my friends to come and be in my shitty movie. So there was no real pressure, or I cast myself in the first movie I ever made. So asking myself was no big thing either.
You didn't argue with yourself? You didn't have that internal debate? Like, wait a minute, I don't want to do this. This is going to be...
I actually had somebody cast and they quit the day we were supposed to start. And I was like, okay, I guess it's me now. So that was neat. But no, I don't... I'm not very good at bugging people about being in my movies. You know what I mean? So it's hard for me to reach out to people to do this. I don't do auditions and stuff, so it is hard for me to sometimes cast my films. I've gotten better. When I first started out asking, that's why I was asking my friends, because my friends were like, yeah, that sounds cool, but outside of my group, it was really hard for me to find people and ask people to be in these films. So
were you kind of an introverted person when you started out?
I'm still very much an introverted. Edit this motherfucking word out. Introverted person. I gotta slow down. I talk really fast too. I'm still very much that. Sometimes I get on these podcasts and I shout and I'm really loud. But in my day-to-day life and on film sets and everything like that, I'm super quiet and kind of try to take myself out of a lot of things, to be honest with you. So
yeah, I was the same way as well. I was a very sort of introverted person, and this might be something that's actually beneficial to anybody out there listening who wants to make a movie, but trying to get over that initial hump of, man, who do I ask that would help me out, because when I started, I was kind of the same way. I just cast my friends, people close to me who I knew would be reliable and would show up and thought the ideas were cool and anything like that. But sort of reaching out beyond that, at least initially, was very sort of terrifying for me. I didn't really, I'm not someone that just generally goes out. I have a friend named DJ. You've met him. He's the most
Yeah.
outgoing, extroverted person in the world. I mean, he will just walk up to anyone and make friends with them on the spot. That's not me. I don't really like engaging with people. I don't even like generally going over to my friends' houses and just hanging out. Honestly, I do it very, very rarely. It's just not my thing. So yeah, it kind of leads into that initial idea. You see this online all the time. If you're going to Google how to cast a movie, or you're trying to make your very first movie, what do you do? What do you do with casting wise? Almost every site I have ever seen says, "Do not cast your friends. Do not do it." That's like,
Really?
oh yeah, yeah. There's tons of them that say, "Do not cast your friends," and I'm 100% against that idea of not casting your friends, because I think
Yeah.
that is the best way, especially if you're a little like if you're an extroverted person and a very sort of an alpha male take charge sort of person, then yeah, you're going to be able to pull people in and wheel and deal and do your thing. That's totally cool. But a lot of filmmakers that I've met anyway have these sort of introverted personalities, and you got to work yourself up to sort of being there. It doesn't just come naturally where they're just like take charge leaders. And so, how do you sort of like dip your toe in the pool of, okay, I want to try this, I want to do something, but how do I do it? I man, cast your friends. I mean, what do you think of that? Do you think it's a bad thing to cast friends for your sort of first film?
For your first film, I think the best thing, and again, this is why I'm a terrible filmmaker, but I think the best thing is to cast your friends, and here's why. When you're first starting off making your first film, you are, uh, to put it as nice as I can put it, you're gonna suck at this, and your friends are gonna sit there, or your cast is gonna sit there and watch you sit there and try to figure this shit out, like what you're doing. And the best people to surround yourself, I think, while you're sitting there stressing out about shit, is your friends. They're not going to sit there. Well, they might sit there and judge you, but they're
I
not
judge you.
strangers
I do
sitting
judge
there and
you. I watch you and
listen.
I judge you
Well,
silently and non-silently, vocally.
I know all this. This isn't new information. Um,
Go watch the
but
making
speaking,
of Pig Face. Plug on Outpost
yeah,
and None.
yeah, watch Matt judge me in every fucking episode. Um, but strangers, it's weird being like judged by strangers. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
People that you don't know watching you sitting there trying to figure out what you're doing sucks. And I know that by experience. But yeah, I just cast my friends because, while you're trying to figure it out, a lot of the time they'll sit in there and they're trying to figure it out with you. So I think it's a cool thing to have friends in on the first, just kind of getting dipping your toe in the water kind of project. It's a good thing to have.
yeah, and I think it's a great thing. And maybe this is diving into like the psychology more of it than what we normally talk about on this podcast. But it's almost like, at least for me, when I was first starting out, because now it doesn't bother me, right? I've made so many movies and sort of jump through those hoops of, okay, I gotta force myself to engage with people I don't know, and I gotta force myself to be put in situations that I would normally have been uncomfortable in, just to sort of get past that barrier and try to make things quote unquote better, because a lot of times you cast your friends, they're not professional actors. Sometimes they
No.
might be.
Yeah.
You might have
Yeah.
friends like you came from theater, so I assume that at least some of the friends that were working on your stuff had some sort of acting experience.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
In my case, I don't think anybody had theater experience. There was one actress who was a friend of mine who flew up from California, and she was a theater actress. That became a whole separate issue. Theater and film sometimes don't mix well. But it was just friends, and I think again, getting back into that mindset I was. I don't really count 1999 because that was just, that again, that was just a bunch of friends. It was a weekend thing I did for an art project. But when we were filming The Grand Horror, which is sort of like what I dove into a feature film first. Um, I think I felt at the time that, getting to your point of being judged by people you don't know, that if I brought in a bunch of outside people who I didn't know very well, I wasn't friends with them, I hadn't gone through the ringer of life with these people, that no one would want to sort of work with me going forward in the future. Or these people who came in and saw, oh, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing at all. Well, then they would go talk, and they would tell everybody else in the community, and then it would be hard for me to be able to get people in the future because you get a reputation of not knowing what the hell you're doing. And
Right.
that was a fear. That was a fear that I had at the time, and I was like, well, I'm just going to get my good friends who love movies and are like, yeah, we'll do it. Your friends are almost always the ones that are going to stick with it through the end, because most friends don't fuck each other over. you know
Right. Right.
Whereas you could have an actor who doesn't know you and gets halfway through and is like, this, I'm bailing on this. This is, this sucks. This is unprofessional. I'm sick of waiting around. Your friends won't necessarily do that for you, or don't do that to you. So that's kind of where my headspace was at the very beginning. I was just kind of scared, honestly, to try to reach out to people, and get them on board a project. It was just much easier to be able to do it with friends.
So when did you start kind of getting brave, Matt, and we're like, okay, I'm gonna make this movie now, and I'm gonna have auditions, and I'm gonna cast people that I don't know. Like, how many films in were you before you were like, this is how I'm gonna go about it now?
Well, the Grand Horde and Outpost Doom were all my friends, and then when we decided to film Isabel, we had that's when we sort of decided we have to, quote unquote, level up. We cannot, if we want to make the film as good as we think we can make a movie. We were wrong, but we need to branch outside. We got to get people who can actually act, who actually are, whether or not they're professional actors or people who just do it as a hobby. It can't just be our friends who only act we're making a movie. Let's branch out and hold auditions, see if we can find better talent to be on the screen in order to enhance our filmmaking skills. Because when I shot The Grand Horror, that was pretty much all handheld nonsense. I it was just, hey, let's just shoot everything we can and see what we can do. When I shot Outpost Doom, my goal was, well, I just want to make it look better. Can I put the shots together, and can I use tracking shots, and do these different things that I wanted to do just to make it look more professional, which I feel like I accomplished.
Right.
There, I was like, okay, well, I know I can make it look better. So now let's try to make it better with a story and people who can actually act. And, that's kind of where I went from there. So it was my third feature film is when I did.
Okay. That was mine too. I made uh my first two features, and then I did auditions. Kind of, I fought tooth and nail about, like, against doing them, but we did auditions for
What was your
Remission.
third? Okay, Remission. Gotcha.
Yeah, it was Remission. Yeah, and I'm not even gonna lie, like, I cheated because I asked a couple people to come out and audition. A, because I didn't know like who or how many people would show up, and B, I already kind of had people cast in my head um, when I was writing. So there were a couple people that I did ask to come to the auditions to be fair about it. Um, but otherwise, it's so weird being in a room with a group of strangers. You know what I mean? Like people that you don't know. And that's really the first time you're hearing your script read out loud, and you're just hoping like people, because we didn't send out sides. I don't know if you send out sides when you did auditions for Isabel.
Ooh, I feel like I did, but honestly, I can't really remember. But because I don't like doing cold reads, so I would imagine that I had sent at least some sides, like emailed them out. But I
Yeah,
can't really remember.
we had a handful of people in the lobby at the place that we did these auditions for Remission, and we gave every one of them sides, and we were like placing bets on how many people were going to still be in the lobby after they read our pages. We were like, it's going to cut down in at least half, because we just thought people would
Did
read
it?
it and just. But it didn't. We actually had a ton of people show
I
up
was there,
for
right?
Remission.
Wasn't I at your auditions?
That's yeah. I think that's like one of the first times uh, we met you guys. Um, and I don't know if Steve auditioned on purpose or if that was like kind of like I don't know what that was about, but I don't. I remember Steve auditioned for Remission,
Yeah.
but I didn't know if he had shown up to audition or if he just showed up because you were there like just um, I don't know if you were filming auditions or you were watching auditions or like because sometimes goes back to casting. If you have other friends that make films, go to and they're having auditions, go to their auditions because I feel like people steal or they like just kind of they watch these auditions and they kind of pick and choose who they thought was really good and ask them to come to their auditions. So um, if you are a filmmaker that has friends that make films and they have auditions, go to those. You'll meet new people, you'll see new actors, and you can kind of cherry pick people that you like.
And it's a way for you to kind of get over maybe that initial fear or trepidation you have of meeting strangers, right? Because you're not
Right,
the one that's directly involved in it. You're just kind of like a fly on the wall. And then you can kind of see what the people's personalities are like. Is it somebody you're going to be able to get along with on set? Because that's a big part of casting is the personality of the person that
yeah,
to be there. If it's somebody who's super, super serious, which happened at your Remission audition, very serious actor,
yeah,
and you're like, oh my gosh, we don't even know what we're doing here. Will those sort of personalities mesh on set, or will it cause problems? So
right.
how did you go about casting outside your friend group? You said you had auditions. We had auditions for Isabel. Did you look
Yeah,
into like what exactly you have to do for auditions, or were you kind of aware going in? This is sort of what we had to do. How do you find a location for auditions? Tell me a little bit about
right.
what you did for Remission.
Yeah, so Facebook is a fantastic thing because, although I was like fairly like I wasn't new to Facebook when we did Remission, but like I wasn't super like a Facebook person, but we just put out a casting call for Remission in different kind of groups and it just had said, "Hey, open audition. Here's the place that it's going to be. This is the roles that we're casting. Just kind of a basic info about the film." Um, and we didn't do like sign up for an audition time, which is another thing that I would suggest. I think Matt, you do
Yeah.
that. We were just like, hey, show up and you get in when you get in. So if you're first in line or you're 30th in line, whatever. You guys were smart and you guys did times.
Yeah,
So I definitely recommend that.
because we kind of
Uh,
do 15-minute time slots. Give or take,
yeah,
it usually takes about 10 minutes, in my experience, 10 minutes to have the actor come in, read through what they want to read through, and give a little bit of time for some questions and answer if
right,
they have it. Now, what I normally do is I send the sides out to the actors ahead of time. So if we post something on Facebook, for example, or even back in the day, I remember we post stuff on Craigslist and things of that nature. It was like send an email, book your time, because if you book a specific
right,
time, then I know you're coming in at 1:15 p.m. in the afternoon, for example, ahead of time, because you have normally at a casting call or audition or something like that, you have like oh, what do they call it? Why am I blanking on the name? I feel so embarrassed right now. It's a sheet. It's basically your audition form, right?
oh,
It's telling you like
yeah,
your name, address, all of that stuff,
right,
what roles you're interested, what you will do, what you won't do, what conflicts you may have during the time period when the film is supposed to occur, what talents you have that the people in the room might not be aware of. So a lot of times people will write down like, "Oh, I have fighting skill.
right,
I've
yeah,
gone through classes on stage fighting and stuff like that." Well, that's good to know if you're making a zombie movie, right? That kind
yeah,
of information. So you want to have like an audition form that everyone can fill out ahead of time. But I usually send that out ahead of time, and I send the sides out ahead of time because I don't like cold readings. When you have someone come into the room and they only got 15 minutes and they're looking through the sides, basically, for the first time there, they're not going to give you the best performance. You're not going to get an accurate gauge of how well they've done. I know there are a
Right.
lot of filmmakers who will say, "Well, I don't want to send out sides 'cause I don't like to give out any part of the script ahead of time. I just don't like."
Right. Right.
I just write up fake sides. Almost everything that I've ever done for that has been fake sides. It's like, okay, I'm going to write a couple pages of just random dialogue here, and then I'm going to send it out to them and just have them, read off of that. Very rarely do I actually send, okay, here's page 10 through 15 of my script, and this is what you're going to read at the audition. So that could be something that
Gotcha.
you could do. You could just write up something that's in the same vein that you can do, and then just say, here you go. Let them prepare. Email it to them ahead of time because you'll have their email address. Say, hey, what's your email address? I'll send you the sides. They read up on it. They show up at the audition, and boom, they're already ready to go. So they nail that sort of first take, and then you can say, okay, can you try it this way? And you still got some time within that 15-minute block to be able to maneuver. And then usually what I will do afterwards, I was like, hey, if we do callbacks, we're gonna have them video. So you're just gonna videotape yourself doing whatever, and then send it in, and we'll judge from there.
So you've had the experience, Matt, where you've held an audition and nobody's shown up, right?
Correct. Well, I would say
So what do
nobody.
you
I would
do?
say
Go
very
ahead.
few people.
Very few people, right? Okay. So say you have what do you do in that situation then when you hold an audition and barely anybody shows up for that audition?
Yeah, that's a great question. If that happens, which has happened before, and sometimes it's not your fault, right? So I would tell any filmmaker out there, like if you post something on Facebook and you're like holding auditions, because I've held auditions at the University of Nebraska Lincoln numerous times. So you've been there in the Temple building, right?
Yeah.
The basement of the Temple building.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get a lot of people that will show up. Sometimes 5 people show up because I usually schedule my auditions for like 5 or 6 hour blocks. Like, all right, come in between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. or whatever, and that's when we're auditioning. But sometimes it's outside of your control. Maybe the people that needed to see that Facebook message never saw it and had no idea, right? Maybe there is an event going on that day that you weren't paying attention to, like a football game or something like that, that you had no idea about during those time periods, but that the people aren't going to show up for it. Maybe there's a bad rainstorm or the weather's bad and people don't want to drive from Omaha necessarily to Lincoln to audition for 15 minutes and then drive back when it's going to be bad weather.
Right.
So there's all kinds of things that can come up. So don't feel bad if you try to get the word out there and no one shows up. But what I generally do at that point in time is I just try to double down my efforts to let people know that we're casting the movie, and then I request video auditions. For me, I find that video auditions go a lot better than in-person auditions. Although I like the in-person auditions better because then you get to build a little bit of a rapport with the individual across from you, and you can have a little bit more control over sensing what type of person they are. For example, we're going to interview Skylar Craig on an upcoming show.
Right.
And what I'll never forget about Skylar is when I first saw, I think she came in audition for, maybe it was Isabel. It was Isabel or something in Shivers Down Your Spine. The first time she was smiling, she was happy, she cracked a joke when she first came in. You don't get that with a video audition. Video auditions,
No.
basically, they just
Right.
record themselves, stating some stuff. Like, for example, I put out a call for some video auditions this month, and I get these video auditions coming in, and they're very serious. They're all super serious. You don't get a sense of the personality of the person necessarily with that. So there's positives and negatives to both of those.
Right. So you kind of done it both ways, where you've done auditions where you do block 15-minute times and have one person come in and read with whoever you have in there with you, with that person. But I've also seen you do it where you've had big group auditions and you kind of pair people off out of the
Yeah.
group to read together. What's your kind of your preference? Is there positives and negatives to doing it each
Yeah,
way?
there definitely
What's
is.
your
My preference is to do it scheduled, and the reason why I prefer that is because let's say, Josh, you're an actor and you reach out
let's say
to me, and
that's
you reach
funny.
out to me, and you're like, "Oh, Matthew, I hear you're doing this puppet movie. I would love to audition for it." I was like, "Okay, we're actually holding auditions on Saturday. When's the time that can work for you?" And like, "Oh, I could be there at 1 p.m. Well, give me 1 to 1:15 p.m. And I'll be there." So I slot you down as 1 to 1:15 p.m. And let's say you don't show, right? I'm not working with
Right.
you. I'm not working with you because if you cannot, I don't care how great of an actor you are, if you cannot make a 15-minute audition that you've told me you will make and that you've slotted it in and I've set you for that time, you're taking a spot that someone else could have had because there's only so many spots in, a 4 or 5 hour period of time.
Right.
If you blow me off or do something like that, that's immediately I know you're not reliable. You're not somebody that I can rely on to show up. You better have a damn great excuse as to why you weren't there. Now that's just me. Other people might say, well, it's not that big a deal because actors are inherently kind of flaky sometimes, and they're not getting paid for this. So blah blah.
Right.
That's fine. Ever to each their own. But for me, I kind of use that initial audition to be like, is this person going to actually show up? If they're not going to show up for an audition, they're not going to show up for you necessarily on a full feature length film, you know.
Right.
But I do like pairing people up as well. I did auditions at a hotel, and that's how I met Mark Popejoy and Christina Olsen is they showed up to audition for something of mine, and they were out there waiting. I was like, well, geez, Mark wants to read for this character and Christina wants to read for this character. I have sides for both of them, these characters talking to each other. Let's just bring them both in. And it was great. So again,
Right.
there's positives and negatives to everything. It's just kind of, I like to get that initial, are you going to show up when you say you're going to show up?
Right. I do, that's what I did love about the remission auditions where there's always like 10, 20 people in the lobby or in the room. And so you're able to sit there and go, I have a side for this character and this character, and I'm going to pair these two people up and have them read together because they might be really great actors, but they just might not look that good together.
No
So I
chemistry.
like to
Yeah, no
see
chemistry.
what um I like to see people together and read together and kind of say, hey, you stay but you go sit down and you come up and stuff like that, kind of mix people up and around just to see how they read and how they look together and how they work together. And I just think bigger groups of people, and it's just kind of a lot more fun. You get a vibe in that room sometimes. It's just a fun vibe having a group of people kind of try to figure this out.
Did you guys ever do
So
callbacks? So you have sort of like your initial, and then you're like, okay, I'm trying to decide between this person and this person. I'm going to do a callback, or did you always just kind of be like, all right, I'm just making the call and putting this person in here?
we didn't do callbacks. So the only real auditions I've ever done was for remission. So it was Tyler and I, and a lot of people brought headshots, which was crazy for us
Yeah.
because we were like, wow, people are like, this is kind of cool. But we sat there with kind of a notebook and took notes for everybody that came up and read together and stuff. And we sat there afterwards, and it wasn't even that hard to cast. You could see just by our notes that we were kind of on the same page as far as like who worked with what character and stuff. So there was no really any need for us to do a callback for that. The only person we had one person that we did not cast, one character that we did not cast out of all the people that auditioned for that movie. And that character, the person that got cast as that character, reached out and said, "Hey, I wanted to, but I wasn't available that day. Can we meet?" And that was Eric Moyer.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, and that's kind of interesting because I feel Well, I guess it's not true because I was thinking I'm pretty much the sole decider on casting decisions for my movies. I do get input. Like Steve would provide a lot of input. We sort of go over stuff together, but I'm kind of like the one that's like, nope, I'm plugging this person in or this person in. I'm sort of, the director makes the final call ultimately, right? And there's a very famous, famous in quotes in our circles about Last Breath. Lisa Cavanda and I had that whole thing was, and we'll talk about that on the Shivers on Your Spine show. But basically,
Right,
what happened
right,
there was a casting. It was between two actresses, and one act. On the first day when we got these audition videos, I went one way, Lisa went the other way, and we were shooting this thing like literally in like 5 days, so we had to make a call and we could not agree, and so we were like, okay, let's sleep on it and come back tomorrow and then discuss then. And when we slept on it, we had flipped the next day, each one of us had flipped who we actually preferred, and then I
yeah,
was like, you know what, we're just going to go this way, and you sort of have to make that decision. Have you ever had any actors, and obviously we're not going to name names of anybody on here,
right,
but have
right.
you ever had any actors that you cast that you felt were going to do a really great job, but then whether it came time to be on set or whether it came time to, they're awesome people but they started being the role, that they just, you realize as a director, like, this is not working, this was a bad decision, like I made the bad call, I put the wrong person in the wrong role.
Right. Um, we made a short, and I'm not going to name the short, and it doesn't matter because it never came out anyway. Um, and I'm not again. I won't name a name, but I'll start with this girl is awesome. Like she's got a really positive attitude, and she's super great. Um, and she's been in other stuff. So, um, the day we were gonna shoot this short, we had told them it was two characters. So we told them, hey, it's gonna be kind of an all day shoot because we could control all the lighting because it was in this dark ass basement of this building, so there were no windows, so it didn't matter. And the first question they asked me when they got there was, how long of a day is it gonna be? And I've been very upfront and honest about this. I'll give you a start time. I don't give end times anymore because I've had people, and this was the person. This is where this came from. I gave them an end time, and they held me to it, and so now I don't give end times anymore. So I gave this girl an end time, and the end time came, and we still had stuff to shoot. And she was like, "Well, you told me we'd be done by now, so I'm leaving," and she left. So that movie never got done because they were just like, "Well, you told me 10 o'clock, so it's 10 o'clock. Bye," and then they just left. So I've never worked with that person again. Again, she's super awesome. She's a really great person. I won't do that. I won't put myself in that situation again. So
Yeah, I felt like I screwed up so many casting things on Isabel. Because that was the first time I'd ever attempted to cast outside of my friend zone. So again, this was like, I don't really know what I'm doing here. I think this person will work good, and I made numerous screw ups on that. And I feel like that was a learning experience for me. That whole film ultimately was a learning experience, but it
right.
allowed me to, moving forward, I was like, okay, I need to take a little bit more active involvement and put a little bit more thought into the chemistry between individuals. If I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to have a boyfriend and a girlfriend, do they actually have any chemistry? Right? Because if it doesn't come out on screen that they have any chemistry, then that's a failure of casting right there.
Right.
And again, I don't blame the actors because ultimately it's the director's responsibility, right? If you have two actors that don't work together very well, not necessarily that they're fighting with one another, offset or anything, but just
Right.
they have no chemistry with one another. That's not the fault of the actors. That's the fault of the director who put them in that situation. Because I always say it, the job of the director is to put everyone in the best position possible to succeed. And if the director does not do that, then how can you blame those individuals if something bad happens? It's the director's call.
Right.
So I had multiple things like that on my movies, but also I had an actress who everybody warned me to not hire because this person was actually known in the community for being very flaky, being very diva-ish, and they were the best actor for the part, and I bucked everybody. I said no. I'm doing this. I believe I can work with this individual, and I think they'll give a really good performance. And day shows up. They contacted like I'm going to be late, and everyone was looking at me. They're all like, we told you this was going to happen." But that person showed up and put in an awesome performance, was great on set, had no problems, no issues, and boom, we knocked out the thing. So it's you never know 100% exactly how it's going to go, but you just got to trust in yourself, trust in your ability to be able to manage personalities. That's another thing. Difficult actors. I've worked with a number of difficult actors, and by difficult, I'll put that in quotes. Not that they're asshole people, not that they're mean individuals, but difficult in terms of actors have a specific way that they like to be directed. For example, there might be one actor that prefers to be directed one way and another actor in that same scene that prefers to be directed another way. So great example of that, at least in my experience. You might disagree because you have a theater background. Theater actors that I have worked with always kind of want to be micromanaged. That I felt like, how did this play? They're always questioning, how did that look? How did that sound? How was it? How blah blah blah. Whereas other actors will be more, just let me know if I'm doing something you don't like. Otherwise, I'm going to roll with it, sort of thing. And I had one actor who was from the stage, and when they got on set and they saw how a movie set was operating. They were very big. All of their movements were like exaggerated and stuff. And I was trying to explain, like, that does not come across on camera. You look goofy. It looks weird. It doesn't look right. And they argued with me like, no, this is how acting should be, blah, blah. I'm like, look, when I got the camera lens on a close-up of your face, you can't be like making your eyes wide and doing dramatic movements with your head, because your head bounces in and out of frame and you look like you're a crazy person, and you're not trying to be a crazy person. It's different. It's a whole different thing. And just trying to negotiate that kind of stuff. I always like, when I'm casting, to find out, what experience do you have? Are you strictly a theater person? Is that the only experience you've had, is working in the theater on stage? Or do you also have experience working on other film sets? And have you been in other films? So can I see examples of your work so I can kind of see what you're going to be like? So that's always a good thing to find out ahead of time, I think.
Right. Theater actors have to do everything big, and their voices have to project, because you got to hit the people in the back row. So pulling them back, like you said, is like a giant pain in the ass.
Yeah, because they're not used to it.
But tie their hands to their sides and see if they can still speak the dialogue. That's what I would do.
I have a question for you.
I do wonder.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I had a question, but you can ask your question first. That's cool. We're a team here. Go ahead.
Boom. Go. Off the top rope. Casting the same actors over and over. Pros and cons. Now, I think you and I both have done this, where we will find an actor that we like, whether it's a muse or just a very awesome actor like Eric Moyer, for example, and everything. Right. And we write something, and we're just kind of like, all right, going to put Eric in this, have to put Eric in this because Eric is an awesome actor, for example. Yeah. Pros and cons to that. Do you feel like it's a positive or negative to just recast sort of like the same people over and over in your movies?
For a while, I was kind of notorious for casting the same people, but the thing is like, you find a group of people, or you find an actor or an actress, and you find somebody that is just really easy to work with, but also, a great actor, and just like the experience is just a lot of fun. So you want to keep you know when you make when you cast your film, or you're making your film, that person is just the go-to because you know it's going to be an easy on-set experience. With that being said, you also become the person that's known for having that person in every single one of your fucking movies. And I don't think that's a great thing to necessarily have. Um, um, you know, mixing it up is difficult because you just don't know what you're going to get.
I've had people come to me, other actors come to me over the years and say, "Well, I didn't audition for your stuff because I just assumed you would put this person in the role."
Right.
And that's, you don't want to get to that sort of thing. I think that if you're going to cast somebody over and over, at least in my opinion, if you're going to cast somebody in a role or use them for multiple projects, I like to make sure that the roles that they're playing are very diverse. So it's not just, you're stereotyping them into pigeonholing them into one type of role. So it's
Right.
like, oh, they're going to play a crazy killer here, or oh, they're going to play a damsel in distress here, or oh, they're going to play like a super hyper intelligent scientist here, or something like that. You got to be able to show range, because when people see these movies and stuff, when they watch them, they're like, oh, okay, I understand why this person was cast in this, and then I understand why this person was cast in this. It's very
Right.
different. It's not like, because actors, at least in my opinion, actors are very judgmental of other actors. I know one particular actor that we both know. I won't name the name, but every time I would cast and I would announce a cast, I'd get a message from this person saying, "That person's not good enough. You should have went with this person instead." Always, because and there would always be a laundry list of reasons as to why I should not have cast that particular person in this role. And I feel like just by talking to actors in the past, they watch, right? Because why are actors judgmental about other actors' performance? Because they always feel that they could have done better in that role had they had the opportunity, right? If you're an
Right.
actor and you're watching, Pigface 2, and you weren't someone who got cast, you're going to watch it and be like, I could have done that way better. Why didn't they cast me? Here's all the reasons in my head. We do it as directors. We look at something, and I'll say to myself, I'll look at, the scene that you filmed with Nicole in Pigface 2. When I eventually watch it, I'm going to be like, God damn it. I could have done this, 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 and this had I been on set. Um, we all do it because creative people are always thinking of like, man, we could have, how could this be improved? How could this been made just a little bit better? And we all believe that we could do it, and I'm sure you do the same things. Just even if it's just internally in your head, like, oh, a different shot there. I'm thinking of a different way to approach it here that could have made it better. We all do it, and so I don't know where I was going with this point, but what was I talking about? I don't know how I got to this, but um,
You're talking about casting and just people saying, "Well, I didn't get cast, but this
yeah,
person got cast."
that
And
yeah, that's where I was going. Thank you. How do
no,
you
you're
how do
good.
you deal with people? Have you ever had someone who's been upset that they did not get cast, or they've contacted you after an audition or something and said, "What did I do wrong in the audition?" or "Why didn't you cast me?" Have you ever had that happen?
No, I've had people come up to me after seeing the movie though and thank me for not casting them.
Oh,
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, I actually did have one person that did reach out. It was like one time though. That was like, "Hey, I auditioned for this. I'm new. I've never really auditioned for anything before. Just kind of wanted to know, was there anything I could have done different?" Um, but that literally only happened to me one
that's
time.
happened to me multiple
So
times. And I love it when actors do that, because that's an act. If you're an actor out there wondering how do you get cast, and maybe that's a whole separate show we could talk about, is how actors can go about the audition process and whatnot. Because we're looking at it from a
yeah,
director's perspective, talking about how he set it up as a filmmaker, but there's a whole different perspective that an actor brings to a casting and audition process. That, to me, as a director, that makes me want to work with you in the future. If you are willing to follow, if you did not get cast, and you are willing to follow up with me, whether it's an email or you run into me in person, like, oh yeah, what could I have done better? Do you have any recommendations for next time of something that would help me? That shows me you're invested, that you want to do it, that you actually have some, gusto, and you're taking it seriously, and you're trying to improve yourself and improve your craft. So one big thing I will tell directors out there is, if you get those emails from individuals, because we usually send out emails to people, you've been cast, congratulations. I always send out emails even to the people I didn't cast. Unfortunately, you were not cast in this, we're going to keep you on file for next time, etc., etc. You
Right.
want to be respectful to people who spent their time to come audition for your thing. Don't just tell the people, announce the people who did it, and never speak or follow up with the people who didn't get cast, because that makes you kind of look like an asshole, and it
Yeah.
also makes them less likely to want to try to come to an audition in the future. So follow up with them, but if they respond, say, hey, what could I have done better? Let them know, hey, this is what I thought. Don't be afraid to tell the actor what you felt that they could have done better. They'll appreciate it. That's why they're asking for the constructive
Right.
criticism. Don't be an asshole and say you sucked, you were terrible because blah blah blah, but just say, this is kind of what I was looking for in the role. And that brings up another interesting point. I usually put out descriptions of what I'm looking for in terms of character,
Right.
so that when they audition, they kind of know, are we looking for like a bubbly blonde valley girl type character? Well, don't come in with like super serious stuff. Now, I have had actors who do come in, they'll read it the way that I've envisioned it, but then they'll specifically say at the audition, would it be okay if I tried it a different way, just to show you a different take on it? Yes, please. To show me a different take, because there's been times when I'm like, that's a better way to go. Don't ever stifle creativity, ladies and gentlemen. Don't
That
stifle.
that was going to be my question to you was, would you rather go with an actor that is, so if you had two people, right, auditioning for the same part, and it was between these two people, would you go for the better actor, or would you go for the person that looked kind of more of the part that you were kind of looking for, and just kind of hope that you can drag the acting out of them?
It depends on how much belief you have in your skills, to be able to mold them into what you want them to be, right? If you're somebody who, again, this is your first movie, you're like, hey, I'm going to do a casting process, and you do not feel comfortable that you have the skill set to be able to work with that person, because that, you can't be introverted and try to convince somebody, you mold them to do what you want, right? That takes a lot of back and forth engaging with the person, multiple, whether it's an online audition sort of reading, or script readings in person, things of that nature. You have to be able to instill in that person the belief that they have, that you know what you're doing. Like, there's trust that is built there between the director and the actor, and that goes for all things. If it's just a simple scene of dialogue, there's got to be a level of trust that's established. If it's a nudity sex scene, there's a different level of trust that needs to be established. There's all these things that go into it, but if you're not someone who's not comfortable with that, I wouldn't go that route of picking the person that you could just pull the performance out of. If you are someone who's comfortable, like, yeah, I can tell this person exactly what I want, and I'm willing to spend the time with them to work with them, then yes, cast a person who you think is you know who can do that. If the part, because that's the thing, right? Certain roles, when we are writer directors, so we're not necessarily just taking somebody else's script and directing it. We are writing the scripts ourselves. So when you and
Right.
I are writing, we have in our mind what these characters look like, because these characters are in our head, and they're the ones moving around in our brain space as we're writing up the script, and the actions that they're doing and what they're looking like. So if you have somebody who looks completely different, I'll give you a great example in Isabel. So Julia Farrell, who's awesome, she's amazing. That character was originally written as a big breasted, bubbly blonde. that's what was in my head the entire time, of that script and everything. And when Julia came in and auditioned, she auditioned for that role. Julia's the opposite of that. And I remember having a conversation with Steve when we were making our final casting, and I was like, I really want Julia for this role. And he's like, she looks nothing like this part. Nothing like the part. And I was like, doesn't matter. I'm making the call. I think of all of the actors that we saw, I felt like she was the one that played that role the best. So I'm just going to go with it, and I don't really care that it's not exactly how it would have been in my head. So again, and that gets more back to the decision as a director of what you do.
Right.
But there are many times when you're going to be talking to people and interacting with them. It's like, do I put the person who looks the part, or do I put the person who acted the best in the part? And sometimes you might have a small pool. Let's say like you have 5 people that show up and they all read for that part, and none of them are what you're looking for, and none of them have the qualities or the skill set to bring out that character. Well, then you got to make a decision. Do I hold off on filming? Do I hold more auditions? Or do I just say, okay, I got to pick something, I got to modify this character to fit? Those are all weird things that'll pop up unexpectedly that you'll have to make decisions on. Do I proceed with the film if I can't find the actors that I have in my head for this? Have you ever done that? Have you ever had a film where you're like, I want to make this, but I haven't been able to find anybody that really fits the part?
Um, not really. I've had pretty good luck, and like I said, for the longest time, I wrote with people in my head. So unless that person that I reached out to said no, I've never really had a problem getting who I wanted. In the films that I write for actors for, there was in the first Pigface, uh, I had one specific character that I was like, they kind of have to look. I wrote a description for one character that I was like, they have to look like this. Or actually, it was two, and um, the one was a little easier, but the other one was a little tougher to find. But again, I didn't have auditions for that. I just kind of reached out to people and was like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Do you know anybody? And I got a handful of uh, responses.
Yeah, and
So
that's also a good thing, is to reach out to other people who are in the community, right? If you don't want to hold formal auditions, reach out to people and be like, hey, maybe you have a friend who's in theater, right? Hey, can you just fire this information out to people that you know to see if there's anybody that friend of a friend, sort of connection wise. That's another great way to sort of get the notice out there of casting and stuff like that. Is sometimes holding an actual in-person audition is not the best way to go when you first start out. Sometimes you just reach out to different people, friends of friends, and then those friends of friends become your friends, and then your network just starts spider webbing out, and you can reach and,
right,
and pull from all those individuals. I do think it is important to sort of step away from casting the same people over and over and over again, because if you remember, one of the reasons why you cast these individuals over and over and over again is because when you didn't know them initially, but then you became friends with them and you like them, so you cast them over and over and over again. But sometimes we forget that we should go back to that original line of thinking, which is, let me cast new people that I don't know, because then guess what? We create new friends. And I'm sure on Big Face
right.
2, you've created many new friends that maybe you didn't have before. And then those are new people that you can sort of bring into future projects and things of that nature. So um, that's kind of casting. I mean, I think we touched on
Yeah.
most of the stuff that we look into. Anything else casting wise that you can think of?
No, going back, just kind of rehashing that first film you make. Just cast your friends and have some
Yeah.
fun, and kind of work your way through, um, and up to casting, outside people. So
Yeah.
I just think it's the best way to go about getting your films made.
For sure. And
So
the last piece of advice that I would give regarding casting, and this is something that I do routinely, is when you are ready to make that jump, and okay, I'm not going to cast my friends anymore, I'm going to cast other people that I don't know, always have a backup plan. always have that understudy in tow. So if you have a couple actors and you have to make that decision, I always say, okay, I'm sorry, we went with this individual. However, if this falls through for whatever reason, you're the number one right after. We'll reach out to you. So, if they are able to keep those dates open and they don't have other stuff going on, always let them know, like, hey, worst case scenario, if something, because that'll happen, you'll cast somebody and stuff will fall through. It happened on The Calling of the Things Beyond. I had cast, everybody was people I didn't work with before. And then one of the actors was a flight attendant and unexpectedly had to go to Chicago for that weekend, and we had to cast somebody that we knew would be reliable last minute for that kind of stuff. So always have a backup plan in a worst case scenario if somebody drops out or you lose them or something of that nature. But with that, thanks everyone for listening to another episode of the Once More for Safety show. Josh, you want to plug a film festival?
Yeah, hey, if you are in the Nebraska area or somewhere, remotely close to the Nebraska area, and you know where Seward is, come hang out with us at the Flatwater Film Festival, October 7th, 8th, and 9th, playing all Nebraska films at the Rivoli Theater. It's a super good time. If you're just a filmmaker that wants to make films and has never kind of known how to get started, it's a great place to network. Just come hang out and watch some cool Nebraska films. And you have I can't say that because it won't matter because it's not coming out today. But if you didn't submit your film and you're looking for next year, it's free. So check us out at the FlatwaterFilmFestival.com and on Facebook and everywhere else that you go hang out. So
for sure. And stay tuned next week because we're going to have another interview with a local actress named Skylar Craig. Stay tuned for that, everybody. Thanks for listening.